In Argentina, the plenary of commissions of the Chamber of Deputies resumed a new day of debate on the so-called Omnibus bill promoted by the government of Javier Milei. The president of Ecuador, Noboa, requested assistance from the government of the United States under the pretext of controlling the internal armed conflict in the country. And in Palestine, the Israeli regime killed more than 80 civilians in the latest shelling of Gaza. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Argentina, the plenary of commissions of the Chamber of Deputies resumed a new day of debate on the so-called Omnibus bill promoted by the government of Javier Milei. For the sixth day, deputies will address the articles of the bill related to issues concerning security, education, health, and the modification of the civil code. It is also expected that by this Wednesday, the private sector entities will make their statements to the deputies. During Tuesday, several human rights organizations and sectors of the civil society called for the rejection of the Omnibus bill, stating that it is unacceptable that the executive power can modify an unprecedented number of norms that affect the essential rights of the Argentine people. The president of the grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo, Estela de Carlotto, questioned the mega package of measures of the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, and warned that it endangers the country's democracy. During a speech at the plenary sessions of the commissions debating the called Omnibus bill in the Chamber of Deputies, the renowned activist focused on the independence of the powers, recalling that with the president's super bills, the executive is trying to grant itself powers that do not correspond to it. In this sense, Estela de Carlotto ratified that if these reforms were to go forward, they would imply a great step backwards and a clear deterioration of acquired rights.
We ask those present to remember and reject this unacceptable omnibus bill. It is unacceptable that the executive power can modify an unprecedented amount of norms that would affect the essential rights of all Argentines, essential rights such as the right to health, housing, education, culture, among many others.
The president of the historic organization warned about the serious setback in human rights that the country is heading towards with the approval of the presidential decrees.
Our democracy is in danger because the executive branch not only pretends to modify and suppress laws but also abrogates powers that do not correspond to it. We call to the people's representative to reflect on the need for the national government to respect the international treaties that have a constitutional rank in our country.
On Tuesday, Chile became the first country in the world to ratify the historic United Nations Agreement for the Protection of the Oceans. The National Senate unanimously approved the so-called Agreement on Marine Biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. This pact, reached in March 2023, guarantees the conservation of 30% of seas by 2030. Environmental groups have insisted for years that this treaty is vital to save the oceans threatened by pollution, the climate crisis, and new technologies, and Chilean environmentalists have played a key role in the debate that led to this important agreement. The president of Ecuador, Noboa, requested assistance from the government of the United States under the pretext of controlling the internal armed conflict in the country. Noboa assured that he would accept all possible international assistance to deal with the current contingency. In the meantime, social movements criticized the decision and pointed out that the new president, for his intentions to strengthen ties with Washington and facilitate the entry of troops from that North American country to Ecuador. In this sense, President Noboa assured that in the next few days, the United States will send to the country the commander of the Southern Command of the United States Army, General Laura Richardson, along with a delegation to Quito with the objective of materializing military logistics support.
Contacto con los Estados Unidos
We have had contact with the United States, and Commander Fitzpatrick is coming here with a delegation to talk to our armed forces and police in the next few days. They have not told us the exact time, but it will be this week. But even so, we still don't have a clear idea of the aid package he will see, which we still have to discuss because there are also needs to maintain this war, and there are also needs to maintain economic stability in the country.
President Noboa stressed the importance of addressing the problem of narco-terrorism because of its global reach.
We are in direct contact with the Secretary of State of the United States, and it is important that they understand that this is a global problem. This is not a problem only in Ecuador. The drugs that leave Ecuador from these narco-terrorist groups end up mostly in the United States or in Europe. We need help from the countries where the product is destined.
In Guatemala, the new board of directors of the Congress will request a study to the General Comptroller's Office, CGC, to know the way in which the 9th legislature, which took office last Sunday, used the public funds assigned to the legislative organism. The new board of directors explained in a press conference that there was a good disposition of their predecessors to provide them with the required information. Both the new and outgoing boards held a meeting for several hours, and later the new congressional authorities received the directors and deputy directors of the legislative branch to learn about the state of the institution. In this sense, the president of the Congress, Samuel Perez, informed that besides requesting the support of the CGC with a special audit, they will carry out other evaluations that they consider necessary for the transparency in the parliament. In Latin America, 4 out of every 5 people living in extreme poverty live in rural areas. This has been confirmed by the most recent report of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC. At a meeting convened by the organization and the International Fund for Agricultural Development held this Tuesday in Mexico, they warned that rural areas continue to be invisible. Despite some progress in the productive sector and the presence of services and industries, rural areas continue to lag far behind. The organizations present at the meeting have proposed, among other measures, to define a new rurality that address some aspects such as Welcome back. The Gaza Health Ministry on Wednesday reported that in the last 12 hours, the Israeli occupation troops killed more than 80 Palestinians in different areas of the Gaza Strip. On the other hand, the authorities stressed that most of the deaths are the result of a series of raids by the Zionist regime in which numerous workers have also been kidnapped. In turn, the Palestinian authorities confirmed more than 24,400 fatalities in 103 days of genocidal operation. Most of them are women and children. We go to Palestine, where our teleSUR correspondent Noor Harassen gives us details about the reality of the inhabitants of the Gaza Strip and the uncertainty due to the persistent attacks of the occupation forces.
What will happen next? A very important question that Palestinians are asking themselves. What will happen now? Weeks passed, months passed, and the situation is still the same. Israel continues its strikes on Gaza, on the coastal enclave, from its north to its south. Today, the Israeli warplanes launched several Israeli strikes on places inside the northern Gaza, like the Sheikh Ijlin, Sheikh Radwan, Al-Karama, also Al-Nafaq Street. Eyewitnesses are talking about whole buildings that collapsed on the heads of its residents. Palestinian medical sources are talking about tens, dozens of people that were killed, and the ambulances and the paramedics did not manage to reach them because of the continuous firing by the Israeli snipers. Here in southern Gaza, the situation is no different. The overnight attacks, the very intense overnight attacks on the city of Khan Yunis forced hundreds of residents to evacuate Khan Yunis city to the green areas in Rafah. However, even though inside the green areas, there is also Israeli attacks. Nur Harazin, teleSUR, Gaza.
On Wednesday, the Red Crescent, sister organization of the International Red Cross for Arab countries, denounced a new attack by Israeli troops against its ambulances. According to the report, the events took place in Nablus in the Balada refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. The paramedics arrived to assist several civilians who were attacked inside a vehicle with a drone. They denounced that in the middle of the rescue work, the occupation troops continued shooting unarmed civilians. In this sense, the Registry of Non-Governmental Organizations lists at least 250 attacks against medical facilities and vehicles, a fact that qualifies as a war crime. Sigrid Kaag, the United Nations Senior Humanitarian and Reconstruction Coordinator for Gaza, arrived on Wednesday in Egypt at the request of the Security Council, given the terrible humanitarian conditions in which Gazans are living. In this sense, the official declared her objective is to facilitate and accelerate and expedite all areas of the assistance for the Palestinian people.
I'm here because of a mandate of the Security Council to see how we can facilitate, accelerate and expedite all areas of the assistance that is so much needed for civilians in Gaza, given the very acute humanitarian conditions that they have to live with. So this visit is for me to see, to discuss with colleagues how to improve, how we can assist the government and the Red Crescent as they wish and how they see it useful, so we can ultimately benefit the civilians, innocent civilians in Gaza. That is the sole.
In Germany, heavy snowfall and freezing rain on Wednesday caused the cancellation of hundreds of flights and trains, accidents on icy roads, and the closure of schools. At Frankfurt Airport, the country's largest, more than 500 flights were cancelled, while in Munich, more than 250 arrivals and departures were cancelled. In western Germany, Saarbrücken Airport was closed for the day, while Düsseldorf and Cologne airports were also affected by delays and cancellations. National train operator Deutsche Bahn cancelled several long-distance connections and lowered the maximum speed of its ice-fast train to 200 km per hour. Freezing rain in western and southern Germany also caused countless accidents on icy roads in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Also in Norway, Oslo Airport announced on Wednesday the temporary closure of air traffic due to heavy snowfall affecting transportation throughout Scandinavia. In the meantime, authorities announced the closure until 15:30 local time and will later consider extending the closure. In this sense, most buses in Oslo were cancelled and the railway service announced the closure of train lines in much of the eastern part of the country. In turn, the Norwegian Meteorological Institute warned of heavy snowfall and winds around nation's capital. In Germany, farmers' workers are threatened to resume protests if the government does not honor agreements to continue fuel subsidies. In this sense, the unions of small farmers reiterated that the government must withdraw the proposal to increase taxes. At least 130,000 workers in the agro-industrial sector have organized mobilizations in the main cities of the country due to the policies and measures against fuel subsidies. The union has also carried out blockades on the main highways and is threatening to take more drastic measures if their demands are not met. The government, for its part, reiterates that the suspension of the subsidy will be gradual. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news, coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. An explosion at a fireworks factory in central Thailand killed at least 23 people, according to provincial officials. The death toll was announced by authorities with Subhanburi province, where the blast occurred in mid-afternoon. The Department of Disaster Prevention and Mitigation said officials were working to secure the site and help affected people. The cause of the explosions is being investigated. The blast came less than a month before Chinese New Year in February, when demand for fireworks is strong. Rescue workers at the scene said no survivors had been found. None were mentioned by provincial authorities, contradicting the department's statements that wounded people had been recovered. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that the fourth meeting of Ukraine on Ukraine at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, was a failure for Kyiv and the Western countries. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said that the outcome was again a failure for Ukraine and its Western sponsors. She recalled that China refused to participate and many other nations were present with a low profile and as observers. In this context, Zakharova emphasized that all meetings in the Copenhagen format, including Davos and subsequent rounds, are useless and detrimental to the settlement of the Ukrainian crisis. Also, in statements to the press, Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova assured that Western countries do not care about the fatalities caused by their attacks in the Yemen and other countries, since they carry out bombings on any target when they consider it necessary, regardless of the consequences they could have. The spokeswoman criticized the fact that the West does not think about the number of children, women, elderly or sick people in the area they attack. According to Zakharova, the only thing the West has historically been concerned about is the profit it can make through bombing. And we stay in Russia. More than 2 million Russians have signed documents supporting President Vladimir Putin's candidacy for the March presidential election, his campaign office announced this Wednesday. According to Russian law, independent candidates must collect at least 300,000 signatures from 40 regions or more to be eligible to run in the election. Incumbent President Putin, who self-proclaimed himself as a candidate, has so far collected 2.5 million signatures, almost 1 million more than in 2018. The Election Commission has already approved 3 candidates for the ballot who were nominated by parties with a parliamentary representation and are therefore not required to collect signatures. Nikolai Kharitonov of the Communist Party, Leonid Slutsky of the Nationalist Liberal Democratic Party, and Vladislav Davankov of the New People's Party, none of them pose a significant challenge to Putin, who has dominated Russian politics since he became president in 2000. In Zambia, a cholera outbreak has so far caused 363 deaths, 30% of them children under 5 years of age, and more than 9,500 cases of illness. According to authorities, the outbreak, which began in early October, has spread to most parts of the country, but the increase in cases in the capital, Lusaka, is very significant. Authorities have mobilized resources to contain the outbreak. Cholera outbreaks in Zambia coincide with the summer rainy season, which brings heavy rainfall, causing severe flooding in many areas. Inadequate wastewater management systems and lack of access to clean drinking water in many underutilized and informal settlements in Lusaka led to cholera outbreaks. Zambian authorities accepted the first batch of 1.4 million oral cholera vaccines delivered on Monday by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and other partners. A huge blast in southwestern Nigerian city Ibadan left at least 2 people dead and scores injured, authorities said on Wednesday, blaming it on explosives stored by illegal miners. 2 people were killed and 77 others injured in that explosion that has affected 7 suburbs of Nigeria's third most populated city. Crowds have thronged the site of the blast as rescue efforts continue. The explosion ripped through more than 24 buildings, and images from the scene showed twisted structures, charred cars, and damaged houses. The blast took place in the Bodija area late on Tuesday, according to Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde. The governor said the state would provide temporary housing and make sure the affected were supported to rebuild their lives. In Africa on Wednesday, local media in the Comoros reported opposition demonstrations claiming the annulment of the presidential vote. In the turn, Comoros security forces clashed with protesters angry at President Assali Assoumani's re-election, which they called fraudulent. Police authorities said that some protesters ransacked the house of a minister and set fire to it, while others tried to block roads in the capital. Security forces responded with tear gas and arrests. Electoral authorities declared on Tuesday that Assoumani had obtained 62.97% of the votes in Sunday's ballots, but the 5 opposition candidates denounced the manipulation of the ballots. In this sense, government spokesman Hamed Saidie accused the opposition of organizing the protests. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia.